My baby sister told me, in front of our entire family, that I was too embarrassing to be seen at her wedding. My mother squeezed my wrist under the table and told me to be the bigger person. So I stayed home. I did not fight it. I did not cry in front of them. And that night, while I sat alone on my private terrace with a glass of wine, every entertainment account in the country was replaying the exact moment her perfect fiancé struck her across the face in front of 300 guests. I did not gasp. I did not feel a single ounce of surprise. I already knew exactly how that night was going to end, because I was the one who had built the stage they were all standing on. Before I tell you how it happened, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you have ever been the family member everyone underestimated, hit that like button, because this story is for you. My name is Vivian Marlowe. I am 33 years old, and for most of my life, I was the daughter my family pretended not to have. I grew up in a beautiful colonial house in a wealthy suburb outside Charleston, South Carolina. The kind of neighborhood where the hedges are trimmed into perfect rectangles and every lawn looks like it's competing for a prize nobody asked to enter. My parents, Diane and Gerald Marlowe, cared about exactly two things in this world: appearances and my younger sister, Presley. Presley was 2 years younger than me, and from the moment she could walk, she was the center of our household's universe. She was effortlessly charming, the kind of girl teachers adored without ever really knowing why. The kind of girl who could turn in a mediocre report card and still get taken out for ice cream to celebrate her effort. I brought home straight A's. I made the honor roll every single semester. I got a full academic scholarship to college. None of it ever seemed to register. My father, who built a moderately successful commercial insurance agency from nothing, measured every human being's worth by the size of their bank account and the label on their blazer. My mother spent her life trying to keep up with women she wasn't even sure liked her. I was the quiet one, the practical one, the one who wore secondhand cardigans by choice and never once managed to be impressive enough for either of them. That dynamic followed us for 3 decades. And it came to a head one evening last spring, at an upscale steakhouse in downtown Atlanta. My parents had insisted on a formal family dinner to celebrate Presley's engagement to a man named Bennett Colgrove, the son of a family everyone in Presley's circle described as old money. I wore a simple navy dress. No labels. Nothing flashy. I sat at that table and listened to my sister talk for the better part of an hour about her wedding, the imported lace on her gown, the 6-figure cost of her venue, the exclusive guest list that had apparently taken her wedding planner 3 months to finalize. I smiled. I nodded. I tried, more than once, to be part of the conversation. My father was 3 glasses of expensive Cabernet deep and laughing loudly at every joke Presley made. My mother kept glancing at me like she was bracing for something. When the plates were cleared, the table went quiet, and I understood exactly what that silence meant. Presley reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick cream envelope with gold lettering. She didn't hand it to me. She slid it across the white tablecloth until it stopped in front of my plate. I opened it, expecting an invitation. Instead, I found an itemized printout of everything I had ordered that night, down to the glass of Pinot Noir, totaling exactly $142. Behind it was a formal letter, printed on the same expensive stationery, informing me that I was no longer welcome at the wedding. I looked up. Presley wasn't embarrassed. She looked proud of herself. "I think we can all agree this is for the best," she said, loudly enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. "Bennett's family is old money. Vivian, they're expecting a certain kind of guest list. I can't have you showing up in one of your thrift store cardigans, making everyone uncomfortable. It would honestly be embarrassing for the whole family." I said nothing. Years of practice had taught me how to lock my reactions somewhere deep and quiet where no one could touch it. "And let's be honest about your career," she went on, laughing sharply. "You do freelance bookkeeping from your apartment. What are you going to talk to his parents about? Their vacation homes, their board memberships. You don't fit into our world. Vivian, you never have. I looked at my parents, waiting for one of them to say something. Anything. In my defense, my father studied his wine glass. My mother offered me that patronizing little smile she always used when she wanted a problem to disappear without having to solve it. They had known. They had planned this with her. I looked down at the bill. $142. A strange, cold calm settled over me. They genuinely believed I was scraping by on freelance invoices, barely making rent. They had absolutely no idea that my bookkeeping business was, in reality, a private investment firm I had spent a decade building from nothing. One that quietly managed portfolios worth tens of millions of dollars for clients across the Southeast. Without a word, I opened my purse, bypassed my ordinary debit card, and set a solid black metal card on top of Presley's itemized bill. It made a small, sharp click against the table. Presley stared at it and burst out laughing. What is that? A novelty card you bought online. You can't afford this place. Vivian, don't embarrass yourself further. Just pay your part and go. I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. My mother snatched the cream envelope and shoved it back toward me, her bracelets clinking against the table. Just let her have her moment. Vivian, she hissed. You've always been so bitter about your sister's happiness. Bennett's parents are flying in from overseas. We cannot afford a single awkward moment. My father, still cutting into his steak without looking up, added his own contribution. Your mother's right. Do you understand what we're investing here? We're taking a second mortgage out on the lake house next month, just to cover the floral arrangements. $150,000. Vivian, on orchids and peonies alone. We can't have you sitting there looking miserable while we put everything on the line for your sister's dream wedding. The words landed, but not in the way he intended. A second mortgage. On the lake house. They were talking about the property in the Blue Ridge Mountains that had been in our family for 3 generations. The crown jewel of my parents' entire social identity. The place Presley had spent every summer of her teenage years hosting parties while I stayed behind in the city working. There was one enormous problem with my father's plan. He no longer owned that lake house. 2 years earlier, my parents had quietly spiraled into financial collapse. Decades of living a lifestyle their actual income could never support, combined with years of funding Presley's designer wardrobes and failed business ventures, had finally caught up to them. They defaulted on the mortgage. The bank began preparing to foreclose. Terrified of the humiliation, they told no one. Not their friends. Not Presley. And certainly not me. The daughter they assumed was too unimportant to ever find out. What they didn't know was that my firm specializes in distressed real estate. When the bank moved to foreclose, one of my holding companies quietly purchased the debt at a discount. Through outside counsel, we offered my father a confidential alternative to public foreclosure. He would sign the deed over to us. His remaining debt would be forgiven, and he could stay in the house under a reduced lease with an option to eventually buy it back if his finances recovered. He signed it without ever asking who was really on the other end of the agreement. He told my mother an anonymous lender had simply refinanced the property. For 2 years. The mortgage payments they proudly discussed at dinner parties were actually lease payments made to a company I owned. Any bank running a routine title search would immediately discover the ownership had changed hands, which meant a second mortgage was not just difficult, it was legally impossible. They were prepared to gamble their entire financial future and risk actual homelessness. To buy imported flowers for a wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. I looked at my father, wiping his mouth with his napkin, looking enormously pleased with his little speech about sacrifice. He had no idea the ground beneath him belonged to me. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor. Presley blinked. My father stopped chewing, My mother's hand froze over her wine glass. They were waiting for me to break down, to beg for a seat at the wedding, to cry the way I had as a teenager whenever Presley mocked my clothes. I didn't give them that. I waved down our waiter, who had clearly been listening from a polite distance. I'll be covering the entire check tonight, I said evenly. Please run it in full, and add a 30% gratuity. Presley scoffed. You're going to max out a credit card just to prove a point. That's pathetic. Vivian, you can't afford this. Just pay your part and go. I didn't look at her. The card processed instantly. I signed, thanked the waiter, and stood. Enjoy your wedding. Presley, I said. I genuinely hope it's everything you've dreamed of. I walked out without waiting for a response, through the heavy doors and into the cool Atlanta night. My driver was already waiting at the curb. Good evening, Ms. Marlowe, he said, opening the door. How was dinner? Educational? I said, and slid into the back seat. Once we pulled away, I called my attorney and lead asset manager, a sharp, unflappable man named Julian, who had worked with me for almost 8 years. I need you to lock down a specific asset first thing tomorrow. I said, the lake house. My parents are trying to leverage it for a second mortgage to pay for my sister's wedding. They still believe they hold the equity. That's not legally possible, Julian said. We're the recorded owner. Any lender is going to find that in underwriting before they even get close to approval. I know. I don't want them anywhere near a predatory lender or trying to forge paperwork out of desperation. Flag the county recording index. If any application, deed transfer, or lien request comes through with their names on it, I want our legal team on it immediately. Consider it done, Julian said. Anything else? Yes, I said, watching the city lights slide past the window. I want a complete financial profile on Bennett Colgrove and his family. Every holding, every liability, every offshore account you can find. Something about their story doesn't sit right with me. A family that wealthy doesn't usually ask the bride's parents to personally fund a 6-figure wedding. I want to know exactly who I'm apparently too embarrassing to sit next to. We'll trace every dollar, Julian said. I hung up and let my phone drop into my lap as the car pulled up to my building. My family thought they had protected their perfect image by cutting me out of the picture. They had no idea they had just handed me every reason I needed to watch that picture come apart. The next morning, sitting in my office with a view of the Atlanta skyline, I sipped my coffee and reviewed Julian's preliminary notes on the Colgrove family. I had barely started highlighting a string of unusual offshore transfers when my personal phone buzzed with a priority alert from the security system in my penthouse. Someone had breached the internal office room, the one space in my home protected by its own separate passcode. I opened the live camera feed. My mother and Presley were inside. Going through my drawers, Presley, in a designer coat, was yanking open drawers and dumping files onto the floor. My mother was running her hands along the bookshelves, searching for something. I watched, almost fascinated, as my mother finally found the outline of my wall safe hidden behind a painting. Found it, she said, her voice picking up clearly on the hidden microphone. Help me guess the code. Try her birthday, Presley said. Or maybe the year she started that little business of hers. She's obsessed with it. They tried 5 different codes. Every one failed. I had heard enough. I tapped the 2-way intercom. If you enter one more wrong code, this system automatically notifies the police of an active break-in, I said, my voice coming through the hidden speakers. Presley shrieked and stumbled backward. My mother spun in a circle, searching for a camera she'd never find. Vivian, where are you? Are you here? She stammered. I'm at my office, watching you and Presley go through my private files in high definition, I said, You have 10 seconds to explain why you broke into my safe before I call the police myself. My mother recovered fast, smoothing her blouse and putting on that same patronizing smile she always used when she was cornered. Don't overreact. Sweetheart, we were just borrowing something. Your grandmother's sapphire brooch. Presley needs it for her bridal portraits this afternoon. It's not like you're ever going to wear it. You're always working. Just let her have it. I let the silence sit there for a long moment. You broke into a locked office and tried to crack a steel safe for a brooch. I said flatly, it belongs in the family. My mother snapped. It should be worn by a bride. Not collecting dust while you sit here alone. The optics matter. Vivian, I'm not giving you the code. I said. And even if I did, you'd be disappointed. The safe's been empty for over a year. Grandmother's brooch has been in a secured vault at my bank since I started traveling for work. It's nowhere near that apartment. Presley let out a scream of pure frustration and kicked a stack of my files across the floor. You ruined everything. You knew I needed that for today. I'm not ruining anything. I said. You're ruining your own morning with your own entitlement. Now I suggest you stop throwing my property around. Because your situation is about to get significantly worse. I opened the security dashboard and engaged a full lockdown. The deadbolts activated with a heavy mechanical thud. The windows tinted to black. My mother gasped. You are not holding us hostage in here, Presley shouted, pounding on the front door. I'm securing a crime scene. I said calmly. You broke into a restricted room and attempted to open a locked safe. That's a felony. I'm giving you 3 minutes to put everything back exactly where you found it. If it's not done when the timer runs out, I press the button, and the police arrive in about 5 minutes with the footage of you two on that safe. They scrambled. I watched them drop to their knees, gathering scattered files with shaking hands, restoring the room while the clock ran down. When the timer hit 0, I released the locks without another word. They fled without looking back. I spent the rest of that week in complete silence. No apologies. No calls. Just the quiet click of Julian's investigation continuing to build. Then Presley started broadcasting from outside my building, telling her followers that her jealous, unstable older sister had locked her and their mother inside an apartment for no reason. She never mentioned the safe, the files, or the 3 minutes spent scrambling to avoid an arrest. In a later video, filmed from the back of my mother's car, she waved around pages from her wedding binder, complaining about a delayed vendor payment. For 2 seconds, a page flashed across the screen, a wedding funding schedule listing a $50,000 transfer from something called the Colgrove Family Trust. I paused the video and sent the frame to Julian. Verify this account, I told him. He called back within the hour, his voice tight. The routing number didn't belong to any family trust. It belonged to a shell company under federal review for suspicious activity, used to move short bursts of cash through luxury vendor accounts before reversing the charges. Bennett was listed as an authorized signatory through a chain of nominee managers. His family's supposed real estate holdings had been sold off under court supervision nearly a decade earlier. The yacht in his social media photos belonged to a charter company. The family office building was rented by the hour. His wealth wasn't just exaggerated. It was staged from the ground up. Neither side of this wedding had a dollar to their name. My parents believed Bennett's family would save their reputation. Bennett believed my parents would eventually hand over a lake house that no longer belonged to them. And Presley believed everyone around her was wealthy, simply because she demanded it to be true. I told Julian to preserve everything and keep tracing the shell company, but to hold off on alerting anyone. I wanted to see how far the illusion would stretch on its own. By the following week, I needed a break from all of it. So I booked a few days at a coastal estate in Big Sur, California. A sprawling cliffside property with private gardens and total seclusion. It happened to be the exact venue Presley had booked for her wedding. though she had no idea. 3 years earlier, my firm had taken a controlling stake in the hospitality group that owned it after the previous owners collapsed under debt. My name was buried under several layers of holding companies. As far as Presley knew, some anonymous investor owned the property. As far as I was concerned, it was simply home. My jet landed on a bright Thursday afternoon. Lawrence, the general manager, greeted me personally at the private entrance. "Welcome back, Miss Marlowe," he said. "The penthouse is ready. And I should mention, we have a fairly large wedding party on the grounds this weekend. They have no access to your floor. Security has been briefed." "Perfect," I said. "I plan on doing absolutely nothing but reading and enjoying the view." The penthouse was its own private world. A glass-walled suite wrapped in a terrace overlooking the ocean cliffs. From up there, I could see the wedding staff far below, setting up rows of white chairs on the lawn. I settled into a lounge chair with a glass of wine and let the sound of the waves erase the noise of the past 2 weeks. That peace lasted until my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Bennett. He opened with an apology for the dinner incident, then pivoted almost immediately, telling me he'd always thought I was the more grounded, more intelligent sister, and that he hated how my family treated me. It was such an obvious play for sympathy that I nearly laughed out loud. He thought he was talking to a lonely, overlooked woman who would jump at a little attention from a handsome man. I decided to play along. He took the bait instantly, complaining about Presley, building false intimacy, and then, finally, asking for the real thing, a secret $50,000 loan to cover a vendor payment due by morning, promising to repay me the moment his trust fund dispersed. I played the anxious freelancer perfectly, asking innocent questions. Why not ask his own parents? Why not ask my father, who was already funding the wedding? His panic made him careless. His messages grew longer, sloppier, and increasingly honest. He confessed that his family's wealth had dried up a decade earlier, that he was drowning in personal debt, and that he was relying entirely on my parents to bail him out, planning to use his new position as their son-in-law to access whatever money they had left. I stared at the screen and felt something close to genuine amusement. Bennett was marrying my sister to get to my parents' money. My parents were mortgaging a house they didn't own to impress Bennett's family, and Presley believed everyone around her was rich, simply because she needed them to be. I forwarded every message to Julian and went to bed early, sleeping better than I had in years. The next morning, my family arrived at the estate. I watched on the lobby security feed as Presley slammed her bag on the front desk, demanding a free upgrade to the top floor suite. Lawrence calmly explained that the top floor was a private residence, not available for rent, currently occupied by the owner. Presley, furious at being denied by a person she couldn't even see, spotted a service elevator down a side hallway and, dragging our mother by the wrist, forced her way inside before security could stop her. My earpiece buzzed. My security chief asked if he should intercept them. "Let them through," I said. "Stand down. Open the service door." I stayed on the terrace, sipping my wine, my back to the room, as I heard the elevator ding and their footsteps come pounding down the hallway. Presley kicked the doors open without knocking. "I don't care who you are," she shouted into the room. "You're in my bridal suite, and you need to leave right now." I stood, turned, and faced them. The look on their faces was something I will never forget. Recognition, confusion, and then pure disbelief, all in the span of 2 seconds. "What are you doing here?" Presley shrieked. "Are you stalking me? You followed me to California to ruin my wedding." My mother recovered first, sneering at my robe and the suite around me. "This is a new low, even for you, Vivian. Maxing out a card to rent a suite just to upstage your sister. Pack your things and leave before we call the police." I said nothing. I walked to the console table, picked up my phone, and pressed a single button. The doors opened, and 4 members of my private security team stepped in, forming a wall between my family and the exit. My mother stumbled backward. Presley froze mid-sentence. I retrieved a single sheet of paper from a folio on the table and held it out. "Read it," I said. My mother took it with shaking hands. It was a behavioral agreement, outlining that, as guests on my property, any further disruption, threats, or trespassing would result in immediate cancellation of the wedding and forfeiture of their deposit. "This entire estate belongs to me," I said. "I own the grounds. I own the venue where your ceremony is happening tomorrow. Sign it. Or my security team escorts you off the property right now, and the wedding is over." They signed, silently, heads down. They were escorted back to the guest wing. That night, Bennett bribed his way past the lobby, and my security intercepted him trying to reach the elevator. He begged for 5 minutes. I let him up. He collapsed into the chair across from me. Tie loose. Eyes bloodshot. "I need that money tonight. Vivian, if I don't wire the payment by morning, I'm finished. Your father's broke. My family's broke. Everyone's been lying." "Then why marry my sister at all?" I asked. "Because your father promised her the lake house," he said. "I thought I could sell it the moment we were married and clear my debts. I owe money to people who don't send polite reminders. If I don't pay them by tomorrow, they're going to show up at the wedding." "I despise her," he added, staring at the floor. "Her whining, her entitlement. But I need that house." I told him the banks opened at 8 and I'd authorize the transfer before the ceremony. Relief washed over his face. He thanked me, called me the only reasonable person in the family, and left. He had no idea the terrace was fitted with security cameras. Every word had been recorded in perfect clarity. The next morning, I watched from my balcony as the wedding began to fall apart in real time. Presley screamed at the florist over the shade of white roses. The catering manager approached my parents privately to inform them their check had bounced. My father tried 3 separate credit cards in front of him. All 3 were declined. Desperate, my mother pulled Bennett aside and begged him to cover it. His card was declined too. The open bar was wheeled away in front of the arriving guests, and the whispering began before the ceremony had even started. By the time Presley walked down the aisle, the tension in the tent was unbearable. Her micro-demand turned confrontation with Bennett happened directly at the altar. Both of them screaming into a live microphone in front of 300 guests and a professional streaming crew Presley herself had hired months earlier. Bennett admitted, on camera, that his family had no money and that the only reason he'd proposed was because he believed she'd inherit the lake house. Presley, in front of everyone, hurled her bouquet at his face. He slapped her. The sound cracked through the tent, caught perfectly by the officiant's microphone, and streamed live to thousands of viewers before anyone could cut the feed. Security restrained Bennett immediately. A medic checked on Presley. The footage was already spreading across the internet by the time my family retreated toward the main building, dragging chaos behind them, threatening lawsuits against the venue, against the staff, against an owner they had never met. I finished my wine, smoothed my blazer, and took the elevator down to meet them. I walked past my father mid-rant, past my mother clutching a tissue, past Presley glaring at me through smeared makeup, and sat down behind the manager's desk. "What are you doing?" my father snapped. "Get up before the owner gets here." "Mr. Marlowe," Lawrence said, stepping forward. "You're looking at her. Vivian Marlowe owns this estate, along with the holding company that manages it." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I laid out the truth for them, piece by piece, the shell company behind Bennett's finances, the defaulted loans behind my father's, and finally, the deed to the lake house itself, proving it had belonged to me for 2 years. I played the recording of Bennett's confession on the wall monitor, his own voice admitting he despised Presley and only wanted the house. When it ended, I called the police, pressed assault charges against Bennett for what happened at the altar, and handed my parents 30-day eviction notices for a house they no longer had any right to be living in. They were escorted off the property that afternoon with nothing left to hide behind. No wealth, no reputation, and a viral video that would follow them long after the wedding itself was forgotten. I went back up to my terrace, poured one more glass of wine, and watched the sun sink into the Pacific. Looking back now, the real lesson was never about the money, or the house, or even the wedding. It was about learning that my worth was never something my family had the authority to decide. For years, I thought if I just stayed quiet enough, worked hard enough, and asked for little enough, I would eventually earn a place at their table. But people who are committed to underestimating you will never reward your patience. They will only spend it. The real victory didn't happen on that balcony in Big Sur. It happened years earlier, quietly, while I was building something real instead of waiting for permission to matter. Have you ever been the one your family wrote off, only to build a life they never saw coming? Tell me your story in the comments. And if this one hit home for you, don't forget to like and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Remember, the best revenge isn't loud. It's just living well,